7-year-old girl secretly collected evidence against her stepfather for months in her teddy bear. When she finally handed it to her teacher and whispered, "Please help my mommy," the recording inside made the school call 911 immediately. The Maple Leaves had begun their annual descent in Oak Ridge, Connecticut, painting the pristine suburban streets in a canvas of amber and crimson. To the casual observer, Maple Lane presented a picture of idyllic small-town tranquility. Restored Victorian homes with wraparound porches, meticulously maintained gardens now preparing for winter, and children racing home from school with laughter that echoed between the trees. Among these children walked 7-year-old Mia Parker, though she didn't run or laugh like the others. She walked with measured steps, her navy blue backpack hanging heavily from her small shoulders, her arms wrapped protectively around a worn teddy bear with cinnamon-colored fur and one slightly loose button eye. Mr. Whiskers, as she called him, had been her constant companion for as long as she could remember. But in recent months he had become something more. A necessity, a shield, a confidant. "Almost home, Mr. Whiskers," Mia whispered, her breath visible in the October air. Her words weren't playful as they might have been a year ago. They carried the weight of dread. Home, the white Victorian with black shutters and a red front door at the end of Maple Lane, was no longer the sanctuary it had once been. As she approached, Mia instinctively slowed her pace, her hazel eyes scanning the driveway. Relief washed over her when she noted the absence of the sleek black Audi that belonged to her stepfather, James. The tight knot in her stomach loosened slightly. It would be just her and Mom for at least a little while. She climbed the porch steps, each one creaking familiarly beneath her feet, and used her key to unlock the front door. Another new development. Before James, the door had rarely been locked during daylight hours. Now, locks, security systems, and careful monitoring of comings and goings were the norm. "Mom!" Mia called out, her voice echoing in the high-ceilinged entryway. "I'm home." Rebecca Parker emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. At 34, Rebecca still possessed the kind of beauty that turned heads, though now it seemed diminished somehow, like a vibrant painting gradually fading in harsh sunlight. Her auburn hair, once worn in creative styles that her art students had adored, was now pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her green eyes, so like Mia's own, held a wariness that hadn't been there before her marriage to James Harrington. "Hey, sweetheart," Rebecca said, her smile genuine but fragile. "How was school today?" "It was okay," Mia answered, the standard response she'd adopted. She didn't mention that she'd barely spoken during class, or that she'd spent recess sitting alone on a bench, whispering to Mr. Whiskers instead of playing with the other children. She didn't tell her mother that Ms. Reynolds, her second-grade teacher, had asked her twice if everything was all right at home. "Just okay." Rebecca knelt down, tucking a strand of Mia's dark hair behind her ear. "No exciting art projects? I thought Thursdays were art days." For a moment, a spark of the old Rebecca shone through. The passionate art teacher who had once transformed classroom walls with murals and inspired a generation of Oak Ridge children to see the beauty in creating something from nothing. Mia hesitated. "We made autumn leaf collages. Mine has a squirrel in it." "That sounds lovely," Rebecca said. "Where is it? I'd love to see it on the fridge." "Ms. Reynolds is keeping them until next week. For parent night," Mia explained, the words catching slightly. Parent night meant James would be there, charming Ms. Reynolds as he charmed everyone, his arm casually but firmly around Rebecca's waist, his other hand perhaps resting on Mia's shoulder in a gesture that looked paternal to observers but felt like possession to Mia. Something shifted in Rebecca's expression, a flicker of understanding, then resignation. "Of course. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it then." She straightened up, wincing slightly, one hand moving unconsciously to her ribs. Mia noticed as she noticed everything now. "Are you hurt, Mommy?" "Just a little sore from cleaning," Rebecca said quickly. "I was reaching up to dust the bookshelves earlier. Nothing to worry about." The lie came easily now after so much practice. "How about a snack? I made oatmeal cookies. The kind with the raisins that look like little bugs." It was an attempt at their old joke from before. Mia managed a small smile, but the lightness wouldn't come. Okay. In the kitchen, Mia sat at the counter, Mr. Whiskers placed carefully beside her. The room smelled of cinnamon and butter, comforting scents that momentarily pushed back the tension that permeated the house. Rebecca placed a small plate of cookies and a glass of milk in front of Mia, then began wiping down already clean countertops. Is James coming home for dinner? Mia asked, breaking a cookie into small pieces rather than biting into it. Rebecca's hands stilled for just a moment. Yes, but he has a meeting first. He'll be home around 7. She glanced at the clock, just past 3:30. We have plenty of time to ourselves. Mia nodded, registering both the words and the unspoken relief in her mother's voice. Nearly 4 hours of peace stretched before them. For hours without measuring every word, without the weight of James's scrutiny and judgment. Can we make dinner together? Mia asked, knowing that cooking had once been something her mother loved. Like we used to with Daddy? At the mention of David Parker, Rebecca's expression softened with a mixture of love and grief. 2 years had passed since the car accident that had taken her first husband's life, but the wound remained raw, especially now that the life they'd rebuilt was crumbling in a different way. That sounds perfect, Rebecca said, her voice slightly hoarse. What should we make? Spaghetti, Mia decided firmly, with the sauce that has all the vegetables hidden in it so you can't see them. Rebecca laughed, a real laugh if brief. Your father's sneaky sauce. I think we have everything we need. For an hour, they cooked together, with Rebecca guiding Mia through the task of tearing lettuce for a salad while the sauce simmered. The kitchen filled with the scent of garlic and tomatoes, and Rebecca hummed softly as she worked, something she hadn't done in months. Mia watched her mother carefully, memorizing the moment, storing it away as proof that the real Rebecca, the one who hummed and laughed and created, still existed beneath the fear. As Rebecca stirred the sauce, her sleeve rode up slightly, revealing a bracelet of purple bruises around her wrist. She quickly tugged the fabric down, but not before Mia had seen. Their eyes met, Rebecca's pleading silently for Mia not to ask, not to acknowledge. I think the sauce needs more oregano, Mia said after a moment, providing the escape her mother needed. You're probably right, Rebecca agreed, reaching for the spice rack with a grateful glance at her daughter. You have a good palate, just like your dad. The mention of David Parker opened a doorway to memories that Mia walked through willingly. Tell me the story again, she requested, setting the table with careful precision. About how you and Daddy met. Rebecca's movements became more fluid as she slipped into the familiar tale. It was at that gallery opening in New Haven. I was showcasing a series of paintings, landscapes of Connecticut in different seasons. And Daddy was there to write about the art, Mia continued, having heard the story many times. That's right. He was working for the Hartford Courier then, covering cultural events. He spent more time talking to me than looking at any of the artwork. Rebecca smiled at the memory. He said he'd found the most interesting piece in the gallery wasn't hanging on any wall. That's romantic, Mia said, placing forks with careful precision. It was, Rebecca agreed. He took notes while I talked about my inspiration for the paintings. Then, just as he was leaving, he handed me his card and had written on the back, "The real story here deserves more than one interview. And then you married him and had me," Mia concluded, simplifying years into a single sentence. Eventually, Rebecca corrected gently. First, we had many dinners and long walks and conversations. Your father believed in taking time to understand things properly. He always said that truth reveals itself slowly, layer by layer. Mia nodded, absorbing this as she did all mentions of her father's philosophy. David Parker had been an investigative journalist known for his methodical approach and unwavering pursuit of facts. In Mia's young mind, these qualities had taken on an almost mythical significance. Is that why he had all those recorders? To catch the truth? Mia asked, thinking of the box in the attic. Rebecca looked surprised at the question. Partly, yes. Recording interviews helped him make sure he got people's words exactly right. That was very important to him. Accuracy, fairness. She paused, a shadow crossing her face. When did you see his recorders? Mia realized her mistake. The box of David's personal effects was kept hidden from James, who had made it clear from the beginning of his relationship with Rebecca that the past, particularly Mia's father, was not a welcome topic of conversation. A long time ago, Mia said vaguely, before we moved to this house. Rebecca seemed to accept this, returning to the sauce. Your father would be so proud of you, Mia. You have his observant eyes and his kind heart. And his palate, Mia added, trying to recapture the lighter moment from before. Definitely his palate, Rebecca agreed, offering a spoonful of sauce for Mia to taste. They worked companionably for another hour, preparing the meal and setting the table with the good plates that James preferred. As the time of his arrival grew nearer, however, the easy atmosphere evaporated. Rebecca checked her appearance in the reflective surface of the refrigerator, tucking stray hairs back into her ponytail. She changed her shirt to one James had purchased for her, a muted blue blouse that she would never have chosen for herself. Mia, too, prepared for the shift. She cleared away her school books from the living room, knowing James considered them clutter. She took Mr. Whiskers upstairs to her bedroom, positioning him on her bed before returning downstairs. James had commented more than once that she was too old to be dragging that ratty thing everywhere, and Rebecca had encouraged Mia to leave the bear upstairs to avoid conflict. By 6:45, dinner was ready, the kitchen spotless, and both Mia and Rebecca had assumed the careful, contained versions of themselves that James expected. When the purr of the Audi's engine sounded in the driveway at 6:58, Rebecca smoothed her blouse one final time. Remember, Mia, she said quietly, James had a difficult meeting today. Let's make things easy for him tonight. Okay? Mia nodded, understanding the subtext perfectly. Don't ask questions. Don't make noise. Don't give him any reason for his temper to flare. The front door opened and closed with deliberate softness, followed by the methodical sounds of James removing his coat, placing his keys in the ceramic dish on the entryway table, and setting down his briefcase. Something smells good, he called, his voice carrying the warm, authoritative tone that had first attracted Rebecca, the same tone that had charmed the Oak Ridge PDA, the neighborhood association, and the clients of his successful real estate development company. James Harrington entered the kitchen with the confident stride of a man accustomed to commanding spaces. At 41, he was undeniably handsome, with salt and pepper hair, piercing blue eyes, and the physique of someone who made time for the gym despite a busy schedule. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, and blue tie that exactly matched his eyes, all part of the carefully crafted image of success and control. Welcome home, Rebecca said, moving forward to accept his perfunctory kiss on her cheek. Dinner's ready whenever you are. Perfect timing, James replied, his gaze sweeping the kitchen, registering everything in his domain. When his eyes landed on Mia, his expression softened in a way that might have seemed paternal to an outsider but never quite reached warmth. And how was school today, Mia? It was good, thank you, she answered with the politeness he expected, keeping her eyes slightly lowered. Excellent. A bright girl like you should be excelling, he said, loosening his tie. Let me change quickly, and we'll eat. As he disappeared upstairs, Rebecca released a breath she'd been holding and gave Mia a quick, reassuring smile. The first encounter had gone smoothly. Perhaps the evening would pass without incident. James returned in casual but still immaculate attire, pressed khakis and a blue Oxford shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. He took his place at the head of the table, where Rebecca had already set his preferred crystal tumbler with exactly 2 fingers of scotch. This looks wonderful, Rebecca, he said appreciatively as she served the spaghetti. Though I thought we'd agreed to cut back on pasta. Summer body doesn't happen in winter, right? He patted his flat stomach with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It's Mia's favorite, Rebecca explained, her tone light but cautious. And I thought after your long day. James waved a dismissive hand. Of course, a special occasion. Speaking of which, he turned to Mia. I signed you up for the winter swim team today. Coach Wilson says they start practice next week. Mia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. She had never expressed interest in swimming competitively. In fact, large bodies of water made her nervous, a detail James was well aware of. That's wonderful, Rebecca interjected before Mia could respond. What a great opportunity, isn't it, Mia? Mia recognized the plea in her mother's eyes. Yes, thank you, she managed, though her appetite had vanished. The discipline will be good for her, James explained, twirling pasta with precision. And the Wilsons are an excellent connection. Did you know Brian Wilson sits on the zoning commission? Very convenient timing, with our Riverside project coming up for review. And there it was, the real reason. Not Mia's well-being or interests, but James's perpetual networking. His use of every relationship as a strategic advantage. Of course, Rebecca nodded. Very thoughtful of you. The conversation continued in this vein throughout dinner, with James describing his workday, a story peppered with names dropped for impact and anecdotes designed to showcase his business acumen. Rebecca and Mia provided the appropriate responses, admiration, subtle agreement, questions that allowed James to elaborate on his expertise. As Rebecca served the small bowls of ice cream she'd prepared for dessert, James's phone chimed with a message. He glanced at it, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. Rebecca, he said, setting the phone down with deliberate calm. Did you happen to speak with Patricia Lawson today? The question hung in the air like a thundercloud. Patricia Lawson had been Rebecca's closest friend when she taught at Oak Ridge Elementary, before James had convinced her that staying home would be better for Mia. Rebecca's hand trembled slightly as she set down the ice cream scoop. She called this afternoon, yes, just to catch up. I see, James said, his voice deceptively soft. And in this catching up, did you mention our disagreement about the Riverside property? Mia watched her mother pale slightly. I may have mentioned we had different opinions about the wetlands preservation. It wasn't your business to discuss, James completed, still using that controlled tone that Mia had learned was far more dangerous than shouting. Patricia's husband sits on the Environmental Review Board. Rebecca, do you understand what you've done? James, I didn't reveal anything confidential. We were just talking about matters that could affect my business. He cut in smoothly. After everything I've done for you and Mia, the least you could do is show some loyalty. Mia stared at her ice cream, watching it melt into a puddle of vanilla cream. The familiar knot returned to her stomach, tighter than before. James, I'm sorry. I didn't think. That's precisely the problem, isn't it? His smile remained, but his eyes had turned to ice. You don't think about consequences. Just like you didn't think about the consequences of letting Mia play sick last week when we were supposed to attend the Robertsons' dinner party. She had a fever, Rebecca protested softly. The school nurse called. The school nurse, James scoffed. Another friend of yours, as I recall. Very convenient. He turned his attention to Mia. You know, Mia, in this family we honor our commitments. When you say you'll be somewhere, you show up. Even when it's difficult. That's how success happens. Mia nodded silently, guilt washing over her despite knowing she had actually been ill. James had the uncanny ability to make both her and her mother doubt their own experiences. I'm sorry, she whispered, eyes still fixed on her dessert. I'm sure you are, James said, his tone softening to something that mimicked kindness. Which is why you'll excel on the swim team. It builds character, teaches discipline. He checked his watch. Speaking of which, it's nearly your bedtime. Why don't you go upstairs and get ready? Your mother and I need to have an adult conversation. Mia glanced at Rebecca, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. Thank you for dinner, Mia said, sliding from her chair. Good night, James. Good night, Mom. Good night, sweetheart, Rebecca replied, her voice steady despite the fear Mia could see in her eyes. I'll come up to tuck you in soon. James merely nodded his dismissal, already reaching for the bottle of scotch to refill his glass. As Mia left the dining room, she heard him say in that dangerously quiet voice, Now, Let's discuss exactly what you told Patricia about the Riverside development. Mia climbed the stairs slowly, her small body tense with the effort of not running, not showing the fear that might draw James's attention. In her bedroom, she closed the door softly and immediately went to Mr. Whiskers, hugging the well-worn bear tightly against her chest. "It's starting again," she whispered to the bear. The adult conversations nearly always ended the same way, with muffled sounds of conflict, sometimes breaking glass, and Rebecca's eventual tears. Mia changed into her pajamas and brushed her teeth in the adjoining bathroom, performing her bedtime routine with mechanical precision while straining to hear the conversation downstairs. The voices remained low, but she could detect the rising tension in James's tone, the increasing submissiveness in her mother's responses. When she returned to her bedroom, Mia didn't climb into bed. Instead, she opened her closet door and created a small nest of blankets in the corner, a sanctuary she had fashioned months ago. She pulled Mr. Whiskers in with her and partially closed the door, leaving just enough space for air and a sliver of light from her bedside lamp. In this hidden space, Mia carefully examined her beloved bear. Mr. Whiskers had been a gift from her father on her 4th birthday, a constant companion through David's death and the tumultuous changes that followed. The bear's fur was worn thin in spots from years of hugs, and one of his button eyes hung slightly loose, giving him a perpetually quizzical expression. But it was the recent modification to Mr. Whiskers that concerned Mia now. With trembling fingers, she located the small seam along the bear's back, carefully hidden beneath his red ribbon collar. The stitches were crude, the best a 7-year-old with limited access to sewing supplies could manage, but they had held. Gently, Mia worked her small fingers into the opening and felt for the hard plastic shape within. The voice recorder she had taken from her father's box in the attic was smaller than her palm, a simple device with minimal buttons that even a child could operate. David Parker had used it for quick notes and preliminary interviews, preferring his professional equipment for formal sessions. Mia had discovered it 3 months ago, during one of James's business trips. She and Rebecca had used the rare days of freedom to explore the attic, looking through mementos of their life with David. The box of his personal effects had contained photographs, notebooks filled with his neat handwriting, and several recording devices. While Rebecca was distracted by an album of wedding photos, Mia had slipped the smallest recorder into her pocket, driven by an instinct she couldn't yet articulate. Now, hearing the tension building in the voices downstairs, Mia pressed the small recording button just as she had done many times before. The tiny red light blinked once, confirming it was active. She carefully positioned Mr. Whiskers near the gap in the closet door. The bear had become her accomplice in a mission she understood only in the simplest terms, to catch the truth, as her father would have done. From below, the sound of breaking glass shattered the evening quiet, followed by Rebecca's voice, now clearly pleading. "James, please, I'm sorry. I won't speak to Patricia again. I promise." Promises. James's voice carried up the stairs, no longer controlled but laden with contempt. "Just like you promised to be a good wife to support me. Instead, you undermine me at every turn." Mia hugged her knees to her chest, making herself as small as possible in her closet sanctuary. She had learned early in James's tenure as stepfather that intervention only made things worse. Once, she had run downstairs during an argument, and James had pivoted instantly to concern and charm, making Rebecca seem hysterical for being upset. Later, when they thought Mia was asleep, the punishment for Rebecca had been worse than before. So she waited, Mr. Whiskers faithfully recording, as the argument continued. James's voice grew colder, more specific in its threats. "If you ever speak about my business again, I'll make sure you regret it. No one would believe you anyway. They all think you're fragile after David's death. Still in grief. Unstable." "I'm not unstable." Rebecca's voice was barely audible. "I just wanted to talk to a friend." "Friends," James scoffed. "You don't need friends. You have me. I take care of everything, this house, Mia's education, your comfortable life. All I ask is loyalty. Is that so difficult?" More sounds followed, movement, a thud. a muffled cry that made Mia press her hands over her ears, though she left Mr. Whiskers in position. The bear's glass eyes reflected the dim light from the bedroom, seeming almost alive with purpose. Eventually, the house grew quiet. Mia heard footsteps on the stairs, heavier ones first, James, then lighter ones some time later, Rebecca. She quickly retrieved Mr. Whiskers and stopped the recording, holding her breath as her bedroom door opened. Mia. Rebecca's voice was soft, concerned. Sweetheart. Mia pushed open the closet door. I'm here, Mom. Rebecca's face showed momentary surprise, then understanding. She knelt beside the closet, wincing slightly with the movement. In the lamplight, Mia could see the redness around her mother's left cheekbone that would likely become a bruise by morning, another injury that would be explained away as clumsiness. Oh, honey, Rebecca said, reaching out to stroke Mia's hair. Did the arguing scare you? I'm sorry. Everything's okay now. James was just upset about work stuff. Mia nodded, accepting the fiction because it was easier for both of them. Can I sleep with you tonight? She asked, knowing James often retreated to his home office after these episodes, working late or drinking until he fell asleep on the leather sofa there. Relief crossed Rebecca's features. Of course. Grab Mr. Whiskers and your pillow. In her mother's bedroom, Mia curled against Rebecca's side. Mr. Whiskers nestled between them. Rebecca read aloud from a worn copy of Charlotte's Web, her voice growing steadier with each page, as if the familiar words were a path back to herself. When Rebecca finally drifted off to sleep, one arm protectively draped over her daughter, Mia remained awake, thinking about the recording now hidden inside her teddy bear. It joined dozens of others she had collected, some containing mundane household conversations, others preserving evidence of James's escalating abuse. Mia didn't fully understand what she was doing or why. She only knew, with a child's intuitive wisdom, that truth needed witnesses. Her father had taught her that someday she would find a way to use these truths to help her mother. For now, Mr. Whiskers would continue to keep their secrets, collecting evidence one conversation at a time. As she finally succumbed to sleep, Mia dreamed of her father. In the dream, he knelt before her, just as he had done in life, looking directly into her eyes as he explained something important. Sometimes, Mia, he said in that gentle, serious voice she could still remember, being brave means watching and waiting for the right moment. The truth always finds its way out, but it needs someone to help it along. In her sleep, Mia clutched Mr. Whiskers tighter, her small hands protecting the evidence hidden within. November arrived in Oak Ridge with a vengeance, bringing biting winds that stripped the trees bare and early darkness that settled over the town like a heavy blanket. The Parker Harrington household on Maple Lane seemed to mirror the season's transformation, its warm facade growing colder, its shadows deeper and more numerous as the weeks passed. For Mia, time had become measured not in days or weeks, but in recordings, 73 of them stored inside Mr. Whiskers, each documenting another fragment of the truth that adults refused to acknowledge. She had developed a system, carefully turning the recorder on whenever James's voice took on that dangerous softness, whenever doors slammed or glass shattered, whenever her mother's voice trembled with fear poorly disguised as agreement. On this particular Tuesday morning, Mia sat at her second-grade classroom desk, Mr. Whiskers positioned carefully on her lap beneath the table. Around her, her classmates chattered excitedly about the upcoming Thanksgiving break, comparing notes on family traditions and travel plans. Mia remained silent, mechanically coloring the construction paper turkey that Ms. Reynolds had distributed, while her mind remained fixed on the recording from the previous night. Don't think I haven't noticed you saving money, Rebecca. What exactly are you planning? Another art class donation? Or something more foolish? Mia had discovered her mother's secret 2 weeks ago, a hollowed-out copy of Pride and Prejudice on the highest bookshelf in the guest room, containing nearly $800 in carefully folded bills. She understood instinctively that this was Rebecca's escape fund, though neither of them had acknowledged it aloud. The discovery had filled Mia with both hope and dread. Hope that her mother was finally planning to leave James. dread that he would discover the plan before it could be enacted. Mia, Ms. Reynolds's gentle voice broke through her thoughts. Are you feeling all right, sweetheart? Elaine Reynolds knelt beside Mia's desk, her kind face creased with concern. 43, Ms. Reynolds had taught at Oak Ridge Elementary for nearly 20 years, developing a reputation for her perceptiveness with troubled children. Her warm brown eyes missed little, and lately they had been fixed on Mia with increasing frequency. I'm fine, Mia answered automatically, the response she had been trained to give to any inquiry about her well-being. Ms. Reynolds studied her for a moment longer. Your turkey only has one color, she observed, nodding toward the construction paper bird that Mia had been coloring entirely in gray. Turkeys are usually quite colorful creatures, don't you think? Mia glanced down at her work, noticing for the first time that she had ignored the rainbow of crayons on her desk in favor of the dull gray one clutched in her small fist. I guess I wasn't thinking, she murmured. That's all right, Ms. Reynolds said, sliding the box of crayons closer. Sometimes our minds wander when we have a lot to think about. She hesitated, then added in a lower voice, You know, Mia, if there's ever anything you want to talk about, anything at all, my door is always open, even during recess or after school. Something in the teacher's tone made Mia look up, really meeting Ms. Reynolds's gaze for the first time that day. What she saw there was not just kindness, but understanding, as if the teacher could see beyond Mia's careful silence to the truth she carried. For a moment, Mia felt the weight of Mr. Whiskers against her lap, the small hard shape of the recorder within him pressing against her thigh. She thought of the 73 recordings, of her mother's hidden money, of James's voice growing more threatening with each passing week. She thought of her father, who had always taught her that truth needed witnesses. But the moment passed. Fear, not for herself but for her mother, closed Mia's throat. James had made it clear what would happen if anyone interfered. If you ever try to turn people against me, Rebecca, remember who they'll believe. A respected businessman or an emotionally unstable widow. Thank you, Ms. Reynolds, Mia said politely, reaching for a red crayon. I'm really okay. The teacher straightened up with a small sigh. All right, but my offer stands. Anytime you need to talk. She moved away to help another student, but Mia could feel Ms. Reynolds's concerned gaze returning to her throughout the morning. At recess, while the other children raced around the playground despite the November chill, Mia found a secluded bench beneath a bare oak tree. She positioned Mr. Whiskers beside her and pulled her coat tighter around her small frame, watching her breath form clouds in the cold air. I don't know what to do, Mr. Whiskers, she whispered to the bear. Mom's scared. I'm scared too. The bear's single loose button eye seemed to regard her sympathetically, the other one steady and resolute. Mia ran her fingers over the worn fur of his head, finding comfort in the familiar texture. Dad would know what to do with all the recordings, she continued, her voice barely audible even to herself. He always knew when it was time to tell a story. Her father's lessons about journalism had been simplified for a child's understanding, but they had stuck with Mia nonetheless. David Parker had explained that sometimes people were afraid to tell their stories, that sometimes the truth needed help to come out. He had taught her that evidence wasn't just about proving something happened, but about making sure people listened when it mattered. I just don't know who would listen to us, Mr. Whiskers, Mia concluded softly. Talking to your bear again, weirdo? The mocking voice belonged to Tyler Wilson, a third grader whose father coached the swim team that James had forced Mia to join. Tyler had inherited his father's athletic build and his mother's sharp features, but the cruelty in his expression was entirely his own. Mia instinctively clutched Mr. Whiskers closer. Leave me alone, Tyler. My dad says your stepdad is, super important, Tyler continued, ignoring her request as he stepped closer. So why are you such a baby? Aren't you too old for a stuffed animal? He's mine, and it's none of your business, Mia replied, her voice stronger than she felt. Mr. Whiskers wasn't just a comfort object. He was the keeper of her secrets, the repository of evidence. She couldn't risk Tyler or anyone else taking him. Let me see him, Tyler demanded, reaching for the bear. What's so special about a ratty old toy? Mia jerked back, clutching Mr. Whiskers to her chest. No, don't touch him. Hey, Ms. Reynolds's voice cut through the confrontation as she approached with swift strides. What's going on here? Tyler immediately adopted an expression of innocence. Nothing, Ms. Reynolds. I was just asking Mia about her bear. Ms. Reynolds looked between the two children, her gaze lingering on Mia's protective grip on Mr. Whiskers. Tyler, I believe the fourth-grade kickball game needs another player. Why don't you join them? Once Tyler had slouched away, Ms. Reynolds sat beside Mia on the bench. Are you all right? You seemed quite upset. Mia nodded, her heart still racing. I just don't like people touching Mr. Whiskers. Ms. Reynolds studied the well-worn teddy bear with gentle curiosity. He looks like he's been a very good friend to you for a long time. He was a gift from my dad, Mia explained, relaxing slightly. Before he died. Understanding dawned in Ms. Reynolds's expression. Ah, I see. That makes him very special indeed. She paused, choosing her words carefully. You know, Mia, I knew your mother when she taught art here. She was absolutely wonderful with the children. So creative and full of life. Mia looked up at this unexpected connection to her mother's past. You knew my mom? Oh yes, Ms. Reynolds smiled warmly. We had lunch together often. She would tell me all about the art projects she was planning, and about you. She was so proud of you, always showing us your drawings. A lump formed in Mia's throat at this glimpse of her mother before James. The Rebecca who had been full of life, who had proudly shared her daughter's artwork. She doesn't teach anymore, Mia said quietly. Ms. Reynolds nodded, her expression thoughtful. I know. We all missed her when she left. She hesitated before adding, she seems different now when I see her at school events. The observation hung in the air between them, an opening that Mia could step through if she chose. For a moment, she considered it, considered telling Ms. Reynolds everything, showing her the recorder, playing the evidence she had so carefully gathered. But the recess bell rang, calling them back to class, and the moment slipped away. As they walked back toward the building, Ms. Reynolds placed a gentle hand on Mia's shoulder. Remember what I said, Mia. My door is always open. The remainder of the school day passed in a blur of routine activities that failed to penetrate Mia's preoccupation. When the final bell rang, she packed her belongings with deliberate care, making sure Mr. Whiskers was securely nestled in her backpack with just his head peeking out. Outside, Rebecca waited by the school gate, a navy blue scarf wound around her neck despite the relatively mild afternoon. Mia knew without asking that the scarf concealed marks from the previous night's discussion. Hey, sweetheart. Rebecca greeted her with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. How was school today? It was okay, Mia replied, falling into step beside her mother as they began the walk home. Ms. Reynolds says she used to know you when you taught art. Rebecca's step faltered slightly, her expression flickering with something between nostalgia and pain. Elaine? Yes, we were friends. She's a wonderful teacher. She said you were wonderful too, Mia ventured. That everyone missed you when you left. Rebecca adjusted her scarf, her gaze fixed straight ahead. That was a different time, Mia. They walked in silence for several blocks, passing the familiar landmarks of their neighborhood. Mrs. Abernathy tending her winter garden, the Chun family's corner store with its bright red awning, the park where Mia had once played without fear or reservation. As they approached their house, Rebecca suddenly stopped, kneeling to adjust Mia's coat collar. Listen, sweetheart, she said, her voice low and urgent. James has invited some business associates for dinner tonight. Important people from the zoning commission. Mia recognized the warning in her mother's tone. I'll be very quiet and polite, she promised. Actually, Rebecca continued, I was thinking you might like to have dinner in your room tonight. You could watch a movie on the iPad. Maybe that one about the penguins you like. Relief washed over Mia. An evening away from James's scrutiny. from having to measure every word and expression, was a precious gift. Really? That would be great. Rebecca brushed a strand of hair from Mia's face, her touch lingering. Just for tonight. And... She hesitated, glancing around as if checking for observers. I need you to do something very important for me, Mia. Can you keep a secret? Mia nodded solemnly, thinking of the 73 secrets already stored in Mr. Whiskers. Rebecca reached into her coat pocket and withdrew a small, folded piece of paper. This is Ms. Carter's phone number, the lady from my art group, remember? I want you to keep it somewhere safe, somewhere James wouldn't think to look. Diane Carter was one of the few friends Rebecca had maintained contact with, though their interactions were carefully concealed from James. She taught art therapy at a women's center in Hartford, a detail Mia had overheard but understood only vaguely. Why do I need her number? Mia asked, confusion mingling with a sense of foreboding. Rebecca took a deep breath. Just in case. In case you ever need to call her. If something happens and if I'm not able to help you myself. The implication settled like ice in Mia's stomach. Mom, what's going on? Nothing, sweetheart, Rebecca assured her quickly. It's just a precaution, like having a fire extinguisher in the kitchen. You hope you never need it, but you're glad it's there if you do. She pressed the paper into Mia's palm. Can you do this for me? Keep it somewhere really safe. Mia nodded, carefully folding the paper into an even smaller square. I'll put it inside Mr. Whiskers, she decided. Next to the... She caught herself just in time, realizing she had never told her mother about the recorder. But Rebecca didn't seem to notice the slip. That's perfect, she said, standing up again. Now let's get home. I need to start preparing for tonight. The dinner party that evening brought 6 guests to the Parker Harrington home, 3 couples dressed in business attire. Their expensive watches and jewelry catching the light as they gestured with wine glasses in the dining room below. From her bedroom, Mia could hear the murmur of conversation, the occasional burst of laughter, and James's voice rising above the others with practiced charm. She sat cross-legged on her bed, the promised movie playing on the iPad, though she paid it little attention. Mr. Whiskers sat beside her, freshly augmented with Ms. Carter's phone number tucked alongside the recorder. The bear was becoming heavier with secrets. As promised, Rebecca had brought up a tray with Mia's dinner. Chicken fingers, green beans, and a small bowl of ice cream, along with a whispered assurance that she would check on her again before bedtime. The gesture was protective, Mia knew, keeping her safely away from James's scrutiny and the penetrating gaze of his business associates. Around 9 o'clock, the front door opened and closed repeatedly as the guests departed. Mia heard the murmur of goodbyes, the polite phrases of gratitude and promises to meet again soon. Then came the sounds she had been dreading, the clinking of glasses being cleared, water running in the kitchen sink, and the inevitable shift in James's voice as the facade of gracious host fell away. She couldn't make out the words at first, just the tone, that dangerous softness that always preceded his worst moments. Quietly, Mia slipped off her bed and pressed her ear to the bedroom door, straining to hear. Embarrassed me in front of Chairman Powell, James was saying, his voice growing clearer as he presumably climbed the stairs. Did you see his face when you mentioned the wetland designations? I was just making conversation, Rebecca's voice replied, the familiar note of appeasement already present. Helen brought up bird watching and I thought. You thought? James cut in, his tone dripping with contempt. That's the problem, isn't it? I don't ask you to think, Rebecca. I ask you to support me, to be charming and agreeable, and to keep your uninformed opinions about environmental regulations to yourself. Their voices moved down the hallway, approaching the master bedroom. Mia backed away from her door, heart pounding, and retrieved Mr. Whiskers. Quickly, she opened the small seam and pressed the record button, then returned to her listening position. I'm sorry, Rebecca was saying, her voice muffled now by the walls between them. It won't happen again. Like you were sorry last time? And the time before that. James's voice rose slightly before dropping again to that controlled tone that chilled Mia's blood. I'm beginning to think you're deliberately undermining me, Rebecca. Is that it? Are you trying to sabotage everything I've worked for? No, James, of course not. I would never. A sudden crash made Mia jump, clutching Mr. Whiskers tighter. Something had been thrown or knocked over. Don't lie to me. James's voice lost its controlled edge for a moment. I saw you talking to Powell's wife in the kitchen. What did you tell her? What did you say to her when you thought I wasn't listening? Nothing. She asked about my art, that's all. She saw the landscape in the hallway and… Your art, James scoffed. Always back to that, isn't it? Your precious little hobby that you think makes you special. There was a pause. Then his voice shifted to something almost contemplative. I've been patient, Rebecca. Very patient. I took on you and your daughter when most men wouldn't have bothered with a widow and her baggage. I gave you this beautiful home, financial security, a respectable position in the community. And still, you can't do the one thing I ask. Support me without question, without your little attempts at independence. Mia heard her mother's breath catch. James, I appreciate everything you've done for us. I do. And I support you. I always have. Then explain this. A moment of silence followed, then Rebecca's voice, now sharp with fear. Where did you get that? Does it matter? The point is, I found it. Hidden in a book of all places. How cliché. Mia's heart sank. The hollowed-out copy of Pride and Prejudice. Rebecca's secret savings. It's nothing, Rebecca said quickly. Just some money I was setting aside. For Christmas presents. I wanted to surprise you. In July. James's voice was deadly quiet now. You started this little collection in July according to the bank withdrawals. Small amounts every week. Very clever. Very premeditated. James, please. You were planning to leave me. It wasn't a question. Planning to take Mia and disappear with this. What is it, nearly $1,000 now? Did you really think that would get you far? No, I wasn't. Stop lying. The sudden roar made Mia flinch, tears springing to her eyes as she heard her mother cry out in fear. Where were you going to go, Rebecca? Back to teaching? Back to being a nobody with a child to support on a teacher's salary. Please lower your voice, Rebecca pleaded. Mia will hear. Mia, James said, his tone shifting abruptly. Yes, let's talk about Mia. Have you considered what would happen to her if you tried to take her away from me? The stability I provide? The opportunities? You don't care about Mia, Rebecca said, her voice stronger now, fueled by maternal protection. You've never cared about her. You use her to control me. The sound that followed, skin striking skin, made Mia press her hand against her mouth to stifle her own cry. Mr. Whiskers recorded faithfully, the small red light blinking in the darkness. I have been a father to that child, James hissed, his voice now terrifyingly quiet. I have provided for her, ensured her education, given her advantages her dead father never could have. And this is how you repay me? By stealing from me? By planning to take her away? James, you're hurting me? Listen carefully, Rebecca, because I'm only going to say this once. If you ever try to leave me, try to take Mia, try to turn anyone against me, I will destroy you. Do you understand? I have friends in family court, in the police department, in child services. One word from me about your emotional instability, your lingering grief, your inability to function without medication, and Mia would be placed in my custody so fast your head would spin. Mia's tears flowed freely now, silent tracks down her face as she pressed Mr. Whiskers against her chest, as if she could somehow protect the bear, and the evidence he contained from James's rage. You wouldn't, Rebecca whispered, her voice breaking. You don't even want her. Oh, but I would, James replied, a new, calculating tone entering his voice. Not because I want her, but because I know it would destroy you to lose her. And if you ever cross me again, that's exactly what will happen. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the shouting. Mia counted her own heartbeats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Before her mother spoke again, her voice defeated. I understand. Good, James said, satisfaction evident in his tone. Now clean yourself up. You look pathetic. Footsteps moved away from the master bedroom, heading downstairs. Mia quickly pressed the stop button on the recorder and slipped Mr. Whiskers under her covers just as her bedroom door opened, revealing James in the hallway. He stood there for a moment, studying her with cold blue eyes. Mia froze, uncertain whether he had heard her at the door, whether he somehow knew about the recorder, about Carter's phone number, about all the secrets she kept. "Shouldn't you be asleep by now?" he asked, his voice perfectly normal, as if the terrifying confrontation with Rebecca had never happened. "I was watching the movie Mom said I could," Mia answered, gesturing toward the iPad still playing the Penguin documentary. James's gaze swept the room, lingering briefly on the small lump under the covers where Mr. Whiskers lay hidden. "It's a school night. Turn it off and go to sleep." "Yes, James," Mia replied, careful to keep her voice steady despite the tear tracks on her face. He looked at her for a moment longer, then added with calculated casualness, "Your mother and I had a discussion about the future. Things are going to be different around here. Better." His smile never reached his eyes. "Good night, Mia." "Good night," she whispered as he closed the door. Mia remained motionless, counting to 100 to make sure James had truly gone, before retrieving Mr. Whiskers. She hugged the bear tightly, the knowledge of what the recorder had captured weighing heavily on her small shoulders. "We have to help Mom," she whispered to Mr. Whiskers. "But how?" She thought of Ms. Reynolds's offer, "My door is always open," and of Ms. Carter's phone number now hidden inside the bear. She thought of her father's lessons about truth and evidence. Mostly, she thought of her mother, somewhere else in the house, likely nursing new bruises and a freshly broken spirit. The enormity of their situation pressed down on Mia, a burden too heavy for a 7-year-old to bear alone. Yet she had no choice but to carry it, to continue her secret mission of recording, of witnessing, of keeping the truth safe until the right moment came to reveal it. That night, Mia slept with Mr. Whiskers clutched tightly in her arms, the bear's button eyes keeping watch in the darkness. Its stuffing now contained not just a recorder and a phone number, but the weight of hope, fragile, desperate hope that someone would listen when the time came to tell their story. As November gave way to December, the Parker Harrington household settled into an uneasy new routine. James's discovery of Rebecca's escape fund had escalated his controlling behavior to unprecedented levels. He now monitored her every movement, checking her phone regularly, accompanying her on errands, and limiting her contact with anyone outside his approved social circle. Rebecca, for her part, had retreated further into herself. The spark that had briefly flared when she stood up for Mia had been systematically extinguished. She moved through the house like a ghost, attending to James's needs with mechanical precision, her expression blank, her once vibrant green eyes dulled by fear and resignation. Mia observed these changes with growing alarm, continuing to document them in her recordings. She had become adept at positioning Mr. Whiskers strategically around the house, on the staircase during arguments, on the kitchen counter during tense breakfasts, beside her while she pretended to read in the living room as James berated her mother for imagined offenses. At school, the changes in Mia did not go unnoticed. Ms. Reynolds watched with increasing concern as the once bright child grew more withdrawn, dark circles forming beneath her eyes from nights spent listening at doors instead of sleeping. Mia's artwork, once colorful and detailed, now featured monochromatic houses with oversized locks on the doors, storm clouds perpetually gathering overhead. During the second week of December, as the school prepared for its holiday concert, Ms. Reynolds found Mia alone in the classroom during recess, bent over a piece of paper. "Aren't you cold out there, Ms. Reynolds?" Mia asked without looking up, having recognized the teacher's footsteps. "A little," Ms. Reynolds admitted, taking a seat at the desk beside Mia's. "But I was more concerned about why you're in here instead of outside with the others." Mia shrugged, continuing to draw with focused intensity. "I'm working on something important." Ms. Reynolds glanced at the paper, expecting to see another of Mia's increasingly troubling drawings. Instead, she found what appeared to be a map, a crude but recognizable layout of a house, with small X marks in various locations. "What are you creating?" Ms. Reynolds asked carefully. Mia hesitated, then answered with measured words. "It's for a story I'm writing, about a detective." Ms. Reynolds studied the child's face, noting the dark circles beneath her eyes, the tension in her small shoulders. "Your dad was a kind of detective, wasn't he? An investigative journalist?" "Yes," Mia replied, something flickering in her expression. "He told me that sometimes the truth needs help to come out." The statement hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning beyond a typical second grader's understanding. Ms. Reynolds felt a chill that had nothing to do with the December weather. "Mia," she said gently, "you know you can tell me if something is wrong, don't you? If something is happening that makes you feel scared or unsafe." Mia's hand stilled over the paper, her gaze fixed on the map she'd drawn. For a long moment she said nothing, and Ms. Reynolds could almost see the internal struggle playing out behind those solemn hazel eyes. Finally, Mia looked up. If someone knew something bad was happening, but no one would believe them because they're just a kid, what should they do? The hypothetical question carried the unmistakable weight of reality. Ms. Reynolds chose her words with care. "Well, that would depend on what kind of bad thing was happening. But in general, if someone, even a child, has evidence that something wrong is going on, there are adults whose job it is to listen and help. Teachers, counselors, police officers. But what if the bad person is really good at pretending to be nice?" Mia pressed, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if everyone thinks he's wonderful, and no one would believe the truth?" The pronoun, he, did not escape Ms. Reynolds's notice. A cold certainty settled in her stomach as pieces began falling into place. Rebecca's abrupt departure from teaching, her increasingly isolated appearance at school functions, always accompanied by her charming, controlling husband. And now Mia, once bright and engaged, withering before her eyes. "Evidence helps," Ms. Reynolds said carefully. "Your father would have known that. Evidence makes people listen, even when the truth is hard to believe." Something shifted in Mia's expression, a moment of recognition, as if the teacher had unlocked something important. She glanced at her backpack, where Mr. Whiskers's worn head peeked out from the top. The bell rang, signaling the end of recess. As students began filtering back into the classroom, Ms. Reynolds placed a gentle hand on Mia's shoulder. "I believe that people who tell the truth deserve to be heard," she said quietly. "Especially brave people who are trying to help others." Mia nodded solemnly, tucking the map into her folder. As she did so, a different paper slipped out, a drawing that confirmed Ms. Reynolds's worst fears. It depicted a small stick figure hiding in what appeared to be a closet, clutching a teddy bear, while two larger figures loomed in the background, one cowering, one with fists raised. Ms. Reynolds felt her professional composure falter as she recognized the unmistakable depiction of domestic violence through a child's eyes. Before she could say anything more, the classroom filled with returning students, and the moment for private conversation passed. That evening, as she prepared dinner, Rebecca noticed Mia sitting unusually still at the kitchen table, Mr. Whiskers propped up beside her as she stared into space. "Penny for your thoughts?" Rebecca asked, attempting a lightness she didn't feel. Mia looked up, studying her mother's face, the concealer that didn't quite hide the yellowing bruise along her jawline, the practiced smile that never reached her eyes anymore. "Mom," she began hesitantly, "if someone is doing bad things, and you have proof, who should you tell?" Rebecca's hands faltered as she chopped vegetables, a flash of fear crossing her face before she controlled her expression. "What kind of bad things, sweetheart?" "Like," Mia chose her words carefully, "like hurting people, or threatening them." Rebecca set down the knife and turned to face her daughter fully, kneeling to meet Mia's eyes. "Has someone hurt you, Mia? At school?" "No," Mia answered truthfully. "Not me." Understanding dawned in Rebecca's eyes, followed by guilt and a complicated grief. She took Mia's small hands in hers. Mia, listen to me. What happens between James and me is adult business. It's not something you need to worry about. But he hurts you, Mia whispered, the truth finally spoken aloud between them. I've seen it. I've heard it. Tears filled Rebecca's eyes. Oh, sweetheart, she breathed, pulling Mia into a tight embrace. I'm so sorry you've had to see that. So sorry. Mia wrapped her arms around her mother's neck, feeling Rebecca's body trembling with suppressed sobs. We could leave, she suggested, her voice muffled against her mother's shoulder. We could go far away where he can't find us. Rebecca pulled back, wiping tears from her cheeks as she cupped Mia's face in her hands. It's not that simple, honey. James is powerful. He has friends everywhere. And he's made it very clear what would happen if we tried to leave. Her voice caught. He would try to take you away from me, Mia, and he might succeed. But if we had proof, Mia insisted, thinking of the recorder hidden in Mr. Whiskers of the nearly 80 recordings it now contained. Wouldn't that help? A spark of something, curiosity, hope, fear, flashed in Rebecca's eyes. What kind of proof, Mia? Before Mia could answer, the distinctive sound of James's Audi pulling into the driveway silenced them both. Rebecca quickly rose to her feet, returning to the vegetables as if their conversation had never happened. Go wash up for dinner, sweetheart, she said, her voice once again carefully controlled. And remember, not a word about this to James. It would only make things worse. Mia nodded, gathering Mr. Whiskers from the table as she slipped from the kitchen. As she reached the hallway, she heard her mother begin to hum, a forced display of normalcy for when James entered. The sound broke Mia's heart more than any of the arguments or tense silences had. That night, unable to sleep, Mia sat in her closet sanctuary with Mr. Whiskers, listening to bits of the recordings she had collected. Her father's voice seemed to echo in her memory. Evidence isn't just about proving something happened, Mia Bear. It's about making sure people listen when it matters. The question that had plagued her for months remained. Who would listen? Who would believe a 7-year-old's evidence against James Harrington, beloved community leader and businessman? As she pondered this, Mia remembered Ms. Reynolds's words from that afternoon. Evidence helps. Evidence makes people listen, even when the truth is hard to believe. And then, most importantly, I believe that people who tell the truth deserve to be heard. Ms. Reynolds would listen. Ms. Reynolds would believe her. The realization settled over Mia with the weight of decision. Tomorrow was the last day of school before winter break. 2 weeks during which she and her mother would be trapped in the house with James, with no respite, no escape to the relative safety of school. If she was going to act, it had to be tomorrow. Mia carefully tucked Mr. Whiskers and his precious cargo back into her bed, then crept to her desk where she found the map she had been working on at recess, the layout of their house with X marks indicating locations where arguments typically occurred, places where James's mask slipped, where the truth of their home life was laid bare. She added one final mark, a circle around her second-grade classroom, and wrote in her careful 7-year-old handwriting, "Tell the truth here." The plan was simple, born of a child's desperate logic and remarkable courage. Tomorrow, she would give Mr. Whiskers to Ms. Reynolds. She would ask for help, not just for herself, but for her mother. She would trust that the evidence she had so carefully gathered would be enough to make someone listen, to break through the facade that James had constructed. As Mia finally drifted towards sleep, she whispered to the bear beside her, "Tomorrow, Mr. Whiskers. Tomorrow we tell our story." The weight of decision should have been too heavy for a 7-year-old's shoulders. But Mia Parker, daughter of a truth seeker, keeper of secrets, had been carrying impossible burdens for months already. Tomorrow would determine whether that weight had been borne in vain, or whether the truth her father had valued so highly would finally set them free. The final day before winter break dawned gray and bitter cold, with heavy clouds hanging low over Oak Ridge like a premonition. Mia Parker woke before her alarm, her small body tense with the weight of the decision she had made. Today would be different from all the days that had come before. Today, the secrets Mr. Whiskers had so faithfully kept would finally be revealed. She dressed with unusual care, selecting a clean pair of jeans and her favorite sweater, a deep purple one with small silver stars that her mother had given her last Christmas, when smiles still occasionally reached Rebecca's eyes. As she pulled it over her head, Mia caught sight of herself in the mirror. The child who stared back looked older somehow, the innocence of 7 years already giving way to something more solemn, more knowing. "Today's the day, Mr. Whiskers," she whispered to the teddy bear propped against her pillow. "Are you ready?" The bear's mismatched button eyes seemed to regard her steadily, one securely fastened, the other hanging slightly loose, rather like Mia herself, partially anchored to childhood while another part dangled precariously over adult understanding. Mia carefully inspected the seam along Mr. Whiskers' back, ensuring it was secure enough to protect the recorder and Ms. Carter's phone number, yet loose enough that Ms. Reynolds would be able to access them. Satisfied, she tucked the bear into her backpack, positioning him so that only his head peeked out, his glass eyes watching the world over her shoulder. Downstairs, the kitchen was filled with unnatural quiet. Rebecca stood at the stove, mechanically flipping pancakes that no one would enjoy. James sat at the island, scrolling through emails on his phone, occasionally issuing directives about the day ahead. "I'll be late tonight," he announced without looking up. "The zoning commission is voting on the Riverside project. I need to be there to address any last concerns." "Of course," Rebecca replied, her voice carefully neutral as she placed a plate of perfectly golden pancakes before him. "Dinner at 8. Then?" "Don't wait," James said, spearing a pancake with his fork. "I'll eat at the club with Powell and the others if things run long. Which reminds me." He glanced up, noticing Mia for the first time as she hesitated in the doorway. "Ah, there she is. Come in, Mia. I was just telling your mother about tonight." Mia approached the kitchen island cautiously, hyper-aware of the precious cargo in her backpack. "Good morning," she said quietly. "I've been thinking," James continued, his tone deceptively casual, "that you should join me at the commission meeting tonight. It would be educational, seeing civic governance in action." Mia glanced at her mother, detecting the flash of alarm that crossed Rebecca's face before she masked it. "Is that necessary, James?" Rebecca asked, placing a small stack of pancakes in front of Mia. "It's likely to run very late, and it's the first night of break." James's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "I believe I'm capable of determining what's best for Mia's development, Rebecca. Besides," his smile returned, cold and calculated, "it's important for the commissioners to see that I'm a family man, the devoted stepfather, investing in his daughter's civic education." Mia felt her stomach twist, appetite vanishing. James had never before shown any interest in including her in his business affairs. This sudden desire for her presence felt ominous, as if he somehow sensed her plan and was moving to counter it. "Unless, of course," James added, his gaze shifting between Rebecca and Mia, "you had other plans for this evening?" The question hung in the air like a trap waiting to be sprung. Rebecca busied herself with the remaining pancake batter, her movements slightly too jerky to be casual. "No other plans," she replied softly. "I just thought Mia might be tired after the last day of school. They usually have parties and activities." "I'm not tired," Mia found herself saying, an idea forming. "But Ms. Reynolds asked if I could stay after school today to help decorate for the class party. It's just for an hour." The lie emerged fully formed, creating the opportunity she would need to speak to her teacher alone. James considered this, apparently finding no threat in the request. "Fine, I'll pick you up at 4, then. We'll have dinner before the meeting." Relief washed over Mia, though she was careful not to show it. "Thank you." James checked his watch and drained his coffee cup. "I should go. I have a breakfast meeting with the environmental consultants." He stood, straightening his already impeccable tie. "Remember, Mia, 4 o'clock sharp. Don't make me wait." "I won't," she promised, knowing with absolute certainty that by 4 o'clock, everything would have changed. James leaned down to place a perfunctory kiss on Rebecca's cheek. Have a productive day, dear. Perhaps you could finally sort through those boxes in the guest room closet? We'll need that space cleared for the holiday guests. The boxes in question contained the last of Rebecca's art supplies. Paintbrushes, canvases, the creative tools that had once defined her. James had been suggesting their removal for months. Another small erasure of Rebecca's former self. Of course, Rebecca nodded, not meeting his eyes. I'll take care of it today. With a final assessing glance around his domain, James departed. The sound of the front door closing, followed by the purr of the Audi's engine, released a tension from the kitchen that Mia hadn't fully realized was there until it dissipated. Rebecca's shoulders slumped slightly, her carefully maintained posture giving way to exhaustion. She turned to Mia with a smile that, while still strained, held genuine warmth. Eat your breakfast, sweetheart. You'll need your strength for all those classroom decorations. Mia took a small bite of pancake, though it tasted like cardboard in her mouth. Mom, she began hesitantly. Do I really have to go to James's meeting tonight? Rebecca busied herself with cleaning the griddle, her back to Mia. I'm afraid so, honey. When James makes up his mind about something. She let the sentence trail off, the implications clear even to a 7-year-old. Mia stared at her mother's back, noting the careful way she held herself to avoid aggravating what were likely fresh bruises beneath her sweater. In that moment, her resolve hardened. Today had to be the day. There would not be another opportunity. Mom, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. What if there was a way to make James stop hurting you? Rebecca went very still, her hands frozen over the sink. Slowly, she turned to face her daughter, her expression a complex mixture of fear, shame, and something else. Something that might have been hope, quickly suppressed. Mia, she said carefully, we've talked about this. It's complicated, and not something you need to worry about. My job is to protect you, not the other way around. But what if I could help? Mia persisted. What if I had evidence? Rebecca crossed the kitchen in 2 quick strides, kneeling before Mia's chair with unexpected urgency. What do you mean, evidence? Mia, what have you done? There was real fear in her mother's eyes now. Not for herself, but for Mia. It made Mia hesitate, doubt creeping in for the first time. What if her plan put her mother in greater danger? What if James retaliated before help could arrive? Nothing yet, she answered truthfully. But I've been collecting things, like Daddy taught me. Recognition dawned in Rebecca's eyes, followed by a flash of her old self. The intelligent, perceptive woman who had matched wits with David Parker. Collecting what exactly? Mia glanced toward the hallway, instinctively checking for James's presence despite knowing he was gone. Recordings, she whispered. In Mr. Whiskers, I found Dad's old recorder in the attic box. I've been recording when James gets angry, when he says those things, when he... She couldn't finish, couldn't name the violence she had witnessed. Rebecca's face drained of color. Oh, Mia, she breathed, a hand rising to cover her mouth. How long? How long have you been doing this? Since September, Mia admitted. I have 83 recordings now. Rebecca closed her eyes briefly, absorbing this information. When she opened them, tears glistened but did not fall. My brave, brilliant girl, she whispered, pulling Mia into a tight embrace. You are so much your father's daughter. Mia clung to her mother, inhaling the familiar scent of vanilla and coffee that had been her constant comfort since infancy. I'm going to give the recordings to Ms. Reynolds today, she confessed against Rebecca's shoulder. She said she would listen if I ever needed to tell her something important. Rebecca stiffened, drawing back to look into her daughter's face. Mia, that could be dangerous. James has made it very clear what would happen if you tried to leave, Mia completed. But it wouldn't be you, Mom. It would be me, and Ms. Reynolds. Adults listen to teachers, right? They're, what did Dad call it? Mandated reporters. A complex series of emotions crossed Rebecca's face as she recognized not only the term but its implications. David had indeed taught their daughter well. Yes, she said slowly. They're mandated reporters, required by law to report suspected abuse. She brushed a strand of hair from Mia's face, studying her with new eyes, not just as her child, but as a potential savior. You've thought this through very carefully, haven't you? Mia nodded solemnly. I had to wait until I had enough evidence. Daddy always said one recording could be a mistake, but a pattern tells the truth. A ghost of a smile touched Rebecca's lips at this echo of David's journalistic principles. He would be so proud of you, Mia. So very proud. The smile faded, replaced by concern. But James is picking you up at 4. If you give the recordings to Ms. Reynolds today, what happens when he arrives at school and you've set this in motion? It was the one flaw in Mia's plan, the danger she had been unable to resolve. I don't know, she admitted. But I can't wait any longer, Mom. He's getting worse. And during break, we'll be home all the time, and there's no one to tell and… Shoo, Rebecca soothed, her decision visibly forming. You're right. It has to be today. She glanced at the clock, then back at Mia with newfound determination. Here's what we'll do. You give the recordings to Ms. Reynolds as you planned. But I'm going to call the school at 3:30 and tell them I'm picking you up instead of James. I'll say he had a meeting change. But won't James be mad when he shows up and we're not there? Rebecca's expression hardened with resolve Mia hadn't seen in years. He won't find us. Once I have you, we'll go straight to Diane Carter's. She has a cabin upstate. James doesn't know about it. We can stay there while the authorities handle the evidence. We're really leaving? Mia asked, hardly daring to believe it. Today, Rebecca confirmed, squeezing Mia's hands. But you have to promise me something, Mia. If anything goes wrong, if James somehow figures out what's happening, if he comes to school early, if anything doesn't go according to plan, you stay with Ms. Reynolds. You don't leave with him no matter what he says. Promise me. I promise, Mia whispered, the weight of the day ahead settling over her like a mantle. Rebecca glanced at the clock again. We need to leave for school now, or you'll be late. Remember, act normal. Don't give James any reason to suspect if he calls to check on us. As they gathered their things, Rebecca moved with a new energy, a sense of purpose that had been absent for too long. At the front door, she knelt once more to look Mia directly in the eyes. No matter what happens today, remember that I love you more than anything in this world, and your father would be so proud of the brave person you've become. Mia nodded, fighting back tears. I love you too, Mom. The walk to school was silent, both of them lost in thoughts of what lay ahead. At the school gates, Rebecca hugged Mia fiercely, whispering a final "be brave" before releasing her. Mia watched her mother walk away, noting how Rebecca's spine straightened with each step, as if she were reclaiming something long surrendered. Then she turned toward the school building, Mr. Whiskers secure in her backpack, and took the first step toward changing their lives forever. The school day passed in an agonizing blur of holiday activities and forced cheer. Ms. Reynolds had transformed the classroom into a winter wonderland, with paper snowflakes dangling from the ceiling and a small tree adorned with ornaments the children had made. In any other circumstance, Mia would have been enchanted. Today, she could barely focus on the crafts and games, her mind fixed on the moment when the other children would leave and she could finally speak her truth. At last, the final bell rang. Children erupted from their seats, gathering backpacks and handmade gifts, chattering excitedly about plans for the break. Mia remained at her desk, carefully putting away her supplies, waiting for the classroom to empty. Ms. Reynolds moved among the students, offering holiday wishes and accepting small gifts and cards with genuine appreciation. Mia watched her, wondering if the teacher had any inkling of the burden she was about to place on her shoulders. As the last student departed with a cheerful Merry Christmas, Ms. Reynolds, the classroom fell into relative quiet, punctuated only by the distant sounds of buses loading and children calling to one another across the playground. Ms. Reynolds turned to find Mia still seated, Mr. Whiskers now placed carefully on the desk before her. Mia? The teacher approached with a gentle smile. Aren't you excited for break to start? I thought you'd be racing out with the others. Mia looked up, meeting Ms. Reynolds's kind gaze directly for perhaps the first time in months. I need to tell you something important, she said, her voice small but steady. About my mom. And James. Something in her tone made Ms. Reynolds's smile fade, replaced by focused attention. She pulled a chair alongside Mia's desk and sat, creating a space of privacy and equality between them. I'm listening, Mia, she said simply. Mia took a deep breath, then carefully pushed Mr. Whiskers toward her teacher. Please help my mommy, she whispered. The words she had rehearsed for so long finally spoken aloud. Mr. Whiskers knows the bad things. He has my daddy's recorder inside. Ms. Reynolds glanced between the child and the well-worn bear, confusion giving way to dawning comprehension. With gentle hands, she took Mr. Whiskers, noting the crude stitches along his back. May I look inside? She asked, respectful of both the bear's significance and Mia's agency in this moment. Mia nodded, watching intently as Ms. Reynolds carefully opened the seam and discovered the small recording device nestled among the stuffing, along with a folded piece of paper. What's this, Mia? She asked, holding up the recorder. It was my dad's, Mia explained, words coming faster now. He was a journalist. He taught me that truth needs evidence so people will listen. She swallowed hard. I've been recording James. When he hurts Mom. When he threatens her. When he says no one will believe her if she tries to tell. Ms. Reynolds's professional composure wavered for just a moment, her eyes betraying shock and then a deep, controlled anger. She examined the device, noting the simple controls. And this has recordings on it? Of your stepfather hurting your mother? Mia nodded solemnly. 83 of them. From September until last night. The enormity of what this child had undertaken. Months of secret documentation. The weight of witness she had shouldered alone. Struck Ms. Reynolds with physical force. She had suspected something was wrong in the Parker Harrington home, had noticed the changes in both Mia and Rebecca, but the extent of what Mia now revealed was beyond what she had imagined. Mia, she said carefully, what you've done is incredibly brave and important. I need to listen to at least one of these recordings, and then we'll need to call some people who can help. Is that okay? Yes, Mia whispered. Mom knows. She's going to pick me up at 3:30. We're going to Diane Carter's cabin so James can't find us. Ms. Reynolds checked her watch. It was just after 3. That's good, she said, though concern crossed her features. But I need to follow a specific process when a child reports abuse. That means calling the proper authorities right away. Like the police? Mia asked, her eyes widening. Yes, and Child Protective Services. Ms. Reynolds confirmed gently. People whose job it is to keep children and their parents safe from harm. Mia fidgeted with the edge of her sweater. James says he has friends in the police department and in family court. He told Mom they wouldn't believe her, that they'd take me away from her. Ms. Reynolds's expression darkened at this typical tactic of abusers, isolating victims by convincing them that authorities were either corrupt or unhelpful. James may know some people, she acknowledged, but the system is designed to protect you and your mom, not him, especially with evidence. She held up the recorder. May I listen now? Mia's nod. Ms. Reynolds pressed the play button. The device whirred to life, and James's voice filled the quiet classroom. Cold, controlled, and undeniably threatening. If you ever try to leave me, try to take Mia, try to turn anyone against me, I will destroy you. Do you understand? I have friends in family court, in the police department, in child services. One word from me about your emotional instability, your lingering grief, your inability to function without medication, and Mia would be placed in my custody so fast your head would spin. Rebecca's voice, broken and pleading. You wouldn't. You don't even want her. Oh, but I would. Not because I want her, but because I know it would destroy you to lose her. And if you ever cross me again, that's exactly what will happen. Ms. Reynolds stopped the recording, her face pale but resolute. This is very clear evidence, Mia. No one who hears this could doubt what's happening in your home. She reached for the classroom phone. I'm going to call Principal Moretti first, and then we'll contact the authorities together. As Ms. Reynolds dialed, Mia felt a strange mixture of relief and fear. The secret was out now, the burden of truth transferred to adult shoulders. But what would happen next remained frightening in its uncertainty. The principal arrived within minutes, his usual jovial demeanor replaced by grim professionalism as Ms. Reynolds played a portion of the recording for him. With a supportive hand on Mia's shoulder, he confirmed what Ms. Reynolds had already explained. We're mandated reporters, Mia, he said gently. That means we're required by law to report when we suspect a child is in an unsafe situation. But even more than that, we want to help you and your mom. What you've done in collecting this evidence was extremely brave and smart. The next hour passed in a blur of phone calls and quiet conversations. The school counselor arrived to sit with Mia while Ms. Reynolds and Principal Moretti spoke with police and child protective services. Mia answered questions as clearly as she could, explaining about the recordings, about James's escalating behavior, about her mother's planned escape that afternoon. At 3:25, Ms. Reynolds returned to Mia's side. Your mom should be calling the office very soon to say she's picking you up, she explained. When she arrives, I'll bring her here, and we'll explain what's happening. The police are sending officers to meet us, and there will be a social worker to help make sure you and your mom stay safe. Mia nodded, fatigue beginning to set in now that the adrenaline of her mission was fading. What about James? He's supposed to pick me up at 4. The police will be here well before then, Ms. Reynolds assured her. And the school is now on secure protocol. No one enters without being identified and cleared. The classroom phone rang, and Principal Moretti answered it. After a brief conversation, he turned to them with a troubled expression. That was the front office. Mrs. Harrington hasn't called, and it's nearly 3:30. A tendril of unease curled through Mia's stomach. She promised she would call. She was going to take me to Diane Carter's cabin. Ms. Reynolds and the principal exchanged concerned glances. Perhaps she's running a bit late, Ms. Reynolds suggested, though her tone lacked conviction. Or maybe she's already on her way and plans to explain in person. The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. 3:30 came and went. Then 3:40. Mia's anxiety mounted with each passing moment. Something's wrong, she finally said, voicing what the adults in the room had clearly been thinking. Mom wouldn't forget. Maybe James came home early. Maybe he figured out what we were planning. Ms. Reynolds knelt beside her. Mia, do you know how to contact your mother directly? Does she have a cell phone? James took it away last month, Mia explained, tears threatening. He said she was spending too much time texting her art friends. Another controlling tactic, recognized by all the adults present. Principal Moretti made a quick decision. I'm calling the police again. We need to update them on the situation. As he stepped away to make the call, the classroom door opened, and the front office secretary appeared, her expression tense. There's a call for Mia, she said. From her stepfather. Mia's blood ran cold. Beside her, Ms. Reynolds stiffened. Put it through to this room, Principal Moretti instructed, returning to the group. To Ms. Reynolds, he added in a low voice, Keep Mia close. I'll handle this. The classroom phone rang again, its ordinary sound now ominous. Principal Moretti answered, his tone professionally neutral. This is Principal Moretti. How can I help you, Mr. Harrington? He listened for a moment, his expression darkening. I see. May I ask why you're calling rather than Mrs. Harrington? Another pause. Yes, Mia is still here. She mentioned you weren't scheduled to pick her up until 4. A longer silence, during which the principal's knuckles whitened around the receiver. I understand your concern, Mr. Harrington, but as per our school safety policy, I'll need to speak with Mrs. Harrington directly before releasing Mia to anyone else. Whatever James said in response caused Principal Moretti's jaw to tighten. Mr. Harrington, I'm not at liberty to. He was apparently cut off, listening again before responding with firm authority. As I said, our policy requires direct confirmation from Mrs. Harrington. If you'd like to come to the school, we can discuss this further in person. He hung up, turning to the anxious faces watching him. Mr. Harrington claims there's been a family emergency. He says Mrs. Harrington has been taken to Hartford Memorial Hospital after a fall down the stairs, and he's on his way to pick up Mia now. No, Mia whispered, horror washing over her. He hurt her. I know he did. Ms. Reynolds wrapped a protective arm around Mia's shoulders. What did the police say about their arrival time? Officers should be here within 10 minutes, Principal Moretti replied grimly. But Harrington sounded like he was already in his car. He could arrive sooner. We need to move Mia somewhere less obvious than my classroom. Ms. Reynolds decided. And I want to stay with her until the police arrive. Agreed. The principal nodded. Use the conference room in the administration wing. I'll make sure the front office knows not to direct Harrington your way if he arrives before the police. As they prepared to relocate, Mia suddenly clutched Ms. Reynolds's hand. Mr. Whiskers, she said urgently. We can't leave him. The recordings? Don't worry, Ms. Reynolds assured her, retrieving the bear with its precious contents. Mr. Whiskers stays with us. The school conference room offered little comfort. Just a long table surrounded by adult-sized chairs, walls lined with achievement plaques and student artwork. Mia sat beside Ms. Reynolds. Mr. Whiskers clutched tightly in her arms, as they waited for either the police or James to arrive. Ms. Reynolds? Mia said softly after several minutes of tense silence. Do you think my mom is really hurt? The teacher measured her response carefully. I don't know, Mia. But if she is, the police will make sure she gets help. The important thing right now is keeping you safe. James lied about the hospital, Mia stated with certainty beyond her years. He always lies, but I'm scared about what really happened. Before Ms. Reynolds could respond, Principal Moretti entered the room, relief evident on his face. The police are here, he announced. 2 officers, along with someone from Child Protective Services. Moments later, a female police officer entered, followed by her male partner and a woman in professional attire carrying a folder. The female officer introduced herself as Officer Chun, kneeling to Mia's eye level with gentle authority. Hello, Mia, she said. I understand you've been very brave today, sharing some important information with your teacher. Mia nodded, still clutching Mr. Whiskers. Did you find my mom? Is she okay? Officer Chun exchanged glances with her partner before answering carefully. We have officers going to your house right now to check on your mother, and others are alerting hospitals in case she really was admitted. We'll know more very soon. The woman from Child Protective Services introduced herself as Ms. Patel, explaining that her job was to make sure Mia remained safe while the situation with her mother was resolved. Is it true that you have recordings of your stepfather threatening your mother? Officer Chun asked gently. Ms. Reynolds held up the small recorder retrieved from Mr. Whiskers. Mia has been documenting the abuse for months, she explained. There are apparently 83 recordings stored on this device. Officer Chun accepted the recorder with proper evidence handling protocol, clearly impressed by Mia's foresight. This is going to be incredibly helpful, Mia. Thank you for being so brave and smart. The relative calm of the moment was shattered by the school secretary's hurried entrance. Mr. Harrington just arrived, she reported tensely. He's demanding to see Mia immediately. He's quite agitated. Officer Chun straightened, her demeanor shifting from gentle to authoritative. Perfect timing. We'd like to speak with Mr. Harrington anyway. Fear clutched at Mia's heart. Please don't let him take me, she whispered, shrinking into Ms. Reynolds's protective embrace. He won't, Officer Chun assured her firmly. You're safe now. The male officer and Principal Moretti left to intercept James, while Officer Chun and Ms. Patel remained with Mia and Ms. Reynolds. The minutes that followed were tense with anticipation, the muffled sounds of raised voices occasionally penetrating from the front office. Then Officer Chen's radio crackled to life. "Chun, we have a situation developing. Harrington is becoming belligerent. Request backup and secure the juvenile." Officer Chun responded immediately, instructing MS Reynolds and MS Patel to take Mia to the furthest point from the front office, the kindergarten wing at the back of the school building. "Wait there until I give the all clear," she directed, already moving toward the door. "Lock yourselves in if possible." The three hurried through the empty school corridors, Mia clutching Mr. Whiskers in one hand and MS Reynolds's hand in the other. They had just reached the kindergarten hallway when a voice called out behind them, a voice that sent ice through Mia's veins. "Mia, stop right there." James Harrington stood at the far end of the corridor, his usual immaculate appearance disrupted by uncharacteristic dishevelment. His tie was askew, his normally perfectly combed hair mussed, as if he had been running his hands through it repeatedly. But most disturbing was his expression, a mixture of rage and calculation that Mia recognized from his worst moments at home. MS Reynolds immediately pushed Mia behind her, creating a barrier between child and threat. MS Patel stepped to her side, forming a united front. "Mr. Harrington," MS Patel called firmly, "I'm Alexandra Patel from Child Protective Services. I need you to stop and remain where you are." James took another step forward, his gaze fixed on Mia. "My stepdaughter and I are leaving," he stated, his voice carrying that dangerous softness Mia knew too well. "This is a family matter that has been grossly misunderstood." "Sir, you need to return to the front office," MS Patel countered, pulling out her phone. "The police officers want to speak with you." A cold smile touched James's lips. "The police have no grounds to detain me. I'm here to pick up my stepdaughter because her mother has been injured. Ask Mia. She knows I'm expected." "Where's my mom?" Mia demanded, finding her voice despite her fear. "What did you do to her?" Something flickered in James's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, at this unexpected defiance. "Your mother had an accident, Mia, as I explained to your principal. She fell down the stairs. Accidents happen when people are careless." The implied threat was not lost on any of them. MS Reynolds tightened her grip on Mia's hand. "Mr. Harrington," she said, her teacher's voice projecting with unexpected authority, "we are aware of the situation in your home. Mia has provided evidence of the abuse you've inflicted on her mother." For an instant, James's mask slipped completely, raw fury contorting his features before he regained control. "Evidence?" he scoffed, though an undercurrent of uncertainty had entered his voice. "What could a 7-year-old possibly?" 83 recordings, Mia interrupted, stepping slightly to the side so she could see him directly, though still keeping MS Reynolds between them. "I put Dad's recorder in Mr. Whiskers. I recorded everything, James. Every time you hurt Mom. Every threat. Every lie." The color drained from James's face as understanding dawned. His gaze fixed on the teddy bear in Mia's arms with dawning horror. For several seconds he seemed frozen, recalculating, reassessing his position. Then his expression hardened with new determination. "Give me that bear, Mia. Now." "The police already have the recordings," MS Reynolds stated firmly. "It's over, Mr. Harrington." James took another step forward, desperation now evident in his movements. "You have no idea what you've done," he hissed, his attention fully on Mia now. "Your mother needed me. You needed me. And this is how you repay everything I've given you." "You haven't given us anything but fear," Mia replied, a lifetime of suppressed truth finally finding voice. "I want my mom back. The real mom, before you made her afraid all the time." James lunged forward suddenly, reaching for Mia, but MS Reynolds and MS Patel moved in tandem, blocking his path. In the same moment, Officer Chun appeared at the far end of the hallway, her weapon drawn. "James Harrington," she called sharply. Stop where you are and put your hands where I can see them. You are under arrest for violating a protection order. James froze, confusion momentarily replacing rage. Protection order? What are you talking about? Rebecca Parker filed an emergency protection order against you this morning, Officer Chin explained, advancing steadily. When officers arrived at your home to serve it, they found evidence of a struggle and what appears to be blood on the staircase. Where is Rebecca Parker, Mr. Harrington? Time seemed to suspend as this new information registered. Rebecca had filed for protection, independently of Mia's actions today. Mother and daughter had separately chosen the same day to break free, neither aware of the other's plan. James's face contorted with a mixture of rage and disbelief. She wouldn't dare, he hissed. She has nothing without me. Nothing. Where is my mother? Mia demanded again, tears finally breaking free to stream down her face. Officer Chun had reached them now, positioning herself between James and the others, her weapons still trained on him. I won't ask again, Mr. Harrington. Where is Rebecca Parker? For a moment, it seemed James might resist further, might force a more violent confrontation. Then, abruptly, the fight seemed to drain from him. His shoulders slumped, and a different kind of calculation entered his eyes. I don't know where she is, he said, his tone shifting to injured innocence. We argued this morning, yes. She was hysterical, threatening to leave, making wild accusations. When I left for work, she was still at home. If she's missing now, or if there's blood, perhaps she hurt herself. She's been unstable for some time, ever since David's death, really. The performance was seamless, the concerned husband replacing the enraged abuser in an instant. But it was too late. Too many witnesses had seen the truth beneath the mask, and more importantly, the evidence Mia had gathered now existed beyond his reach. Mr. Harrington, place your hands behind your back, Officer Chun instructed firmly. You're under arrest for violating a protection order and for suspicion of assault. As her partner appeared at the other end of the hallway, James finally recognized the futility of further resistance. He allowed himself to be handcuffed, though his gaze remained fixed on Mia with an intensity that made her shrink back against Ms. Reynolds. This isn't over, he said quietly as the officers prepared to lead him away. No one will believe a child and a mentally unstable woman over me. I'll be out by dinner. Officer Chun tightened the handcuffs with deliberate precision. Actually, Mr. Harrington, I think you'll find that 83 audio recordings are quite persuasive evidence. Not to mention the blood evidence our team is processing at your home right now. As James was led away, his mask of control finally crumbling into stunned disbelief, Mia turned to Ms. Patel with renewed urgency. Please, we have to find my mom. She must be really hurt if there's blood. Ms. Patel knelt before her, placing gentle hands on Mia's shoulders. The police have officers searching for her right now, Mia. They're checking hospitals, friends' homes, anywhere she might have gone if she managed to leave after filing the protection order. Diane Carter, Mia suggested immediately. That's where she said we would go. She has a cabin upstate. Ms. Patel nodded, immediately relaying this information via her phone. As they waited for news, Ms. Reynolds led Mia back to her classroom, creating a quiet sanctuary away from the disruption that now permeated the school. The next hour passed in a blur of anxious waiting. Principal Moretti brought snacks and juice, recognizing that Mia had likely not eaten since morning. Ms. Reynolds sat beside her former student, offering quiet reassurance while Ms. Patel coordinated with authorities in a corner of the room. Finally, Ms. Patel approached with an expression that hinted at positive news. Mia, she said gently, the police have found your mother. Mia sat up straighter, hope and fear battling for dominance. Is she okay? Where is she? She's at Hartford Memorial Hospital, Ms. Patel explained carefully. She was injured during an altercation with your stepfather this morning, but she managed to drive herself to the emergency room after he left. The hospital called the police when they recognized signs of domestic violence, which is standard procedure. How badly is she hurt? Ms. Reynolds asked, her arm protectively around Mia's shoulders. She has a concussion, some bruising, and needed stitches for a cut on her forehead. Patel replied, her tone measured. But the doctors say she's stable and should recover fully. She's been asking for Mia. Relief washed over Mia, so powerful it brought fresh tears. Can I see her? Please. That's why I'm here. Ms. Patel smiled gently. I've been authorized to take you to the hospital. Ms. Reynolds can come too, if that would make you more comfortable. Mia looked up at her teacher with silent pleading. Ms. Reynolds immediately nodded. Of course I'll come if it's allowed. As they prepared to leave, Mia clutched Mr. Whiskers tightly to her chest. The bear had served his purpose as keeper of evidence, but his role as comforter remained essential. Mr. Whiskers did it, didn't he? She asked Ms. Reynolds as they walked to Ms. Patel's car. He helped save Mom, just like I hoped. Ms. Reynolds smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Mr. Whiskers was very brave, Mia, but you were the truly courageous one. What you did today, what you've been doing for months, was incredible. The drive to Hartford Memorial Hospital took 20 minutes that felt like hours to Mia. Ms. Patel explained what would happen next, that both Mia and her mother would receive support from victim services, that temporary housing would be arranged while the legal process unfolded, that James would likely remain in custody given the seriousness of the charges and the evidence against him. When they finally arrived at the hospital, Mia practically ran through the corridors, guided by Ms. Patel toward the room where Rebecca waited. At the doorway, she hesitated briefly, suddenly afraid of what she might find. Ms. Reynolds placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. It's okay, Mia. You can go in. Taking a deep breath, Mia stepped into the room. Rebecca lay in the hospital bed, a bandage covering part of her forehead. Her left eye surrounded by a dark bruise that makeup could never have concealed. An IV line ran from her arm to a bag of clear fluid hanging beside the bed. But despite these signs of injury, Rebecca's face transformed with joy when she saw her daughter. Mia, she breathed, arms opening to receive her. Mia rushed forward, carefully climbing onto the edge of the bed to embrace her mother. Mom, she sobbed, finally releasing the emotions she had controlled all day. I was so scared. I know, sweetheart, Rebecca murmured, stroking Mia's hair with her unencumbered hand. I'm so sorry, but we're safe now. Both of us. They clung to each other for several long moments before Rebecca noticed the others in the doorway. Her expression softened further at the sight of Ms. Reynolds. Elaine, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you for believing Mia, for helping us. Ms. Reynolds approached the bed, professional composure momentarily overcome. Rebecca, she said simply, taking her former colleague's hand. I'm so sorry I didn't realize sooner that I didn't do something. You did exactly what was needed when it mattered most, Rebecca assured her. To Ms. Patel, she added, all of you did. As the adults spoke quietly about immediate next steps, Mia remained curled against her mother's side, one arm still wrapped around Mr. Whiskers. The bear had completed his mission, but his journey, like theirs, was far from over. Mom, Mia whispered as the conversation continued around them. Did you really file a protection order this morning? Rebecca nodded, wincing slightly at the movement. After you left for school. After you told me about the recordings. She squeezed Mia's hand. You gave me courage, sweetheart. Knowing you had been so brave, collecting evidence all this time, it made me realize I had to be brave too. James came home and found out? A shadow crossed Rebecca's face. Yes, he was very angry, more than I've ever seen him. When I tried to leave, her voice faltered. Well, you can see what happened. But you got away, Mia said, pride evident in her voice despite the tears that still lingered. You drove yourself to the hospital. I did, Rebecca confirmed, a hint of her old strength shining through. Once he left for his meeting, I managed to get to the car. I knew I had to get help before he realized what I'd done, before he could get to you at school. Her expression clouded again. Did he try to take you? He came to school, Mia nodded solemnly. But Ms. Reynolds and the police protected me, and I gave them the recordings from Mr. Whiskers. Rebecca smiled through her tears, brushing a strand of hair from Mia's face with tender fingers. Your father would be beyond proud of you, Mia Parker, and so am I. The weeks that followed were challenging but healing. James remained in custody, denied bail due to the overwhelming evidence against him and the clear flight risk he posed. The 83 recordings Mia had collected became the cornerstone of the case against him, supplemented by Rebecca's testimony, medical evidence, and statements from those who had witnessed his behavior at the school. For the first few days after James's arrest, Mia and Rebecca stayed in a hotel provided by Victim Services. Then, as Christmas approached, Diane Carter offered them her guest house, a small but comfortable cottage behind her main residence in West Hartford. There, surrounded by Diane's supportive presence and away from the house on Maple Lane with all its painful memories, they began the slow process of rebuilding their lives. Rebecca's physical injuries healed gradually. The bruises faded, the stitches were removed, and the lingering symptoms of her concussion diminished. The psychological wounds would take longer, but with therapy sessions 3 times a week, she began to reclaim parts of herself that James had systematically erased. She started painting again. Small watercolors at first, then larger canvases filled with vibrant colors that expressed emotions too complex for words. Mia, too, attended therapy, sessions designed to help her process what she had witnessed and the burden she had carried. Some days were harder than others. Nightmares often disrupted her sleep, sending her searching for her mother in the darkened cottage, needing reassurance that they were truly safe. Through it all, Mr. Whiskers remained her constant companion, though his role had evolved. No longer a secret keeper, he became a symbol of courage and truth, a tangible reminder that even the smallest, softest things could contain unexpected strength. As February melted into March, Rebecca received an offer to teach art classes at the community center where Diane worked. It wasn't a full-time position, but it was a step back toward the career she had loved, a reclamation of purpose beyond survival. The legal proceedings against James moved forward with methodical precision. Each development brought a mixture of anxiety and relief. Anxiety at having to revisit painful memories. Relief that the system designed to protect them was, in this case, working as intended. James's attempts to manipulate the narrative faltered in the face of Mia's recordings, his carefully constructed facade of respectability crumbling beyond repair. On a mild evening in early April, Rebecca and Mia sat on the small porch of the guest cottage, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Nearly 4 months had passed since the day at school when the truth had finally emerged. 4 months of healing, of rebuilding, of rediscovering joy in small moments. I've been thinking, Rebecca said, her fingers absently stroking Mia's hair as the child leaned against her. It might be time for us to find our own place soon. Somewhere new, just for us. Mia considered this, the idea of a fresh start, both exciting and intimidating. Could we have a garden? Like Mrs. Abernathy used to have on Maple Lane? Absolutely, Rebecca smiled. With sunflowers and snapdragons and whatever else you'd like to plant. And maybe, Mia hesitated, maybe we could get a cat? Mr. Whiskers might like a friend. Rebecca's laugh, a sound that had been absent for so long, bubbled up naturally. I think that could be arranged. A garden and a cat and a fresh start. As darkness settled around them, bringing with it the first stars of evening, Mia held Mr. Whiskers on her lap, her fingers tracing the neat stitches that had repaired his seam after the recorder was removed. Stitches that Diane had helped her sew with proper thread and a real needle, not the crude repairs she had managed in secret months ago. Mr. Whiskers doesn't have to keep secrets anymore, she said, echoing words she had spoken on that first night after James's arrest. Now he can just be my bear. Rebecca wrapped her arm around Mia's shoulders, drawing her closer. And we don't have to keep secrets either, she agreed softly. We can just be ourselves. Together, as they sat in companionable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one, both mother and daughter recognized the truth in those simple words. The journey ahead would not be without challenges. Healing rarely followed a straight or easy path, but they would face whatever came together with the courage that had saved them both. And Mr. Whiskers, nestled in Mia's arms, would bear witness not to fear and threats, but to the gradual rebirth of joy, to quiet evenings filled with peace, to the soft unfolding of a future reclaimed from shadows. For that was the most important truth of all, that even after darkness, light returns, that secrets, once spoken, lose their power to harm, that healing, once begun, continues its quiet work, mending what was broken with new threads of strength, of resilience, of hope.